in the interests of cracking straight on with it, we'll just go straight into The Chambermaid. Drew, what's that all about?
In spite of the persistent stereotype, notably in the US, of Mexicans as lazy, the citizens of that country are in fact the hardest working in the industrial world. Though this in itself is not something to be proud of. It is a necessity of lax or often absent enforcement of labour laws, lack of job security and huge income inequality. Based on our own play, itself inspired by a photographic installation called The Hotel, Lila Avilese's La Camarista, or The Chambermaid, tells the tale of one of these hard-working, low-paid Mexicans, a young chambermaid in a 5-star Mexico City hotel. We never see the maid, Eva, Gabriela Cartol, outside of the hotel. She has a 4-year-old son who she pays another woman to look after, but we never see him. To the viewer, he exists only as a distant presence on a telephone, and he must seem like that to Eva for much of the time too. Eva is part of an army of domestic staff in the hotel, tending to the needs of the current guests and wiping away the traces of the previous ones, bodily fluids and all, to maintain the illusion of blank newness and lack of history to each room's new occupants. Even the views from the windows in the hotel's corridors are out of bounds to the staff, them being paid to be not seen and not heard. Instead, when not cleaning rooms that would be the stuff of their dreams, if only they had the time and energy left for such fripperies, Eva and her colleagues spend most of their time in the noticeably less pleasant and less well-maintained service areas. In this world, some people try to make a few extra pesos by selling plastic containers, fidget spinners and hand creams to their co-workers, and a few, Eva included, arrive extra early to take classes to allow them to earn a high school level qualification, at least until the class is shut down by the union for an unexplained reason. This is an area of private domains and fiefdoms, with some very petty displays of minor authority, such as the lift operator who says nothing when a chef enters her lift eating, but rebukes Eva later for the same thing, because she can. But it's also an area of aspiration. Eva herself, in sole charge of the 21st floor, has designs in the 42nd. A rarefied place of luxury suites, VIP guests and attendant perks. But this will be decided by an unseen management. And if workplace politics are at play, they are as opaque to Eva as to the viewer. None of the world of this hotel and its owners particularly enlightening or unusual. If you've ever seen any of the many documentaries or reality shows about life below stairs in hotels, then none of this is going to be unfamiliar to you. And there's nothing uniquely Mexican about most of it. But it's still interesting for all that, and particularly for the empathy and sympathy we feel for its star. Gabriela Cartol as Eva is captivating, her often expressionless face still hinting at hopes, aspirations and discontentment, and her standoffishness with her fellow employees instantly understandable for myriad good reasons, starting with chronic tiredness and fatigue and working up from there. It is a delight though to see her eventually open up and even smile, and it's then even more galling to see her dreams slapped down by the reality of her situation. The Chambermaid is in many ways a tremendously downbeat film, with its strongest theme seeming to be a fatalistic, why fecking bother, though there's certainly a broad vein of simmering defiance throughout, impotent as it may be. Cartol and Aviles together create an unsentimental portrait of this wage slave in the oddly austere and isolated world of this opulent hotel. We never see the city, except through the hotel's windows, but they fill that portrait with humanity, pathos and veracity. A few scenes are genuinely difficult to watch as a result, the tension almost unbearable as Eva looks like she might take out her frustrations in ways that would be entirely understandable but utterly self-defeating. It's not as accomplished a film, but La Camarista is a good companion piece to Alfonso Cuarón's Roma, a faceless corporate modern counterpart to that film's family employment, and is definitely worth seeking out.
Yeah, I've no major complaints with this. I particularly liked that central lead performance. It is quite engaging, and she's asked to do quite a lot in carrying the emotional heart and basically all the interesting parts of this film, which doesn't have a lot of otherwise interesting things in it. It's a fairly, low key by its very nature kind of experience, but she does really well in kind of pulling that along and getting you invested in her character. So that really does help.
And without a lot of dialogue either.
Exactly.
Very much unspoken work.
Yeah, so that helps an awful lot. I don't know. Maybe at the end of it, I was getting around to sort of thinking, what ultimately is the point of this, and it can come across, if you're feeling particularly uncharitable, as just another one of these kind of explorations into, look at the poor people, look at how the poor people also have internal lives and are complex people. Aren't I great for pointing it out? And but I don't particularly think that is the case. It does seem to come from a place of genuine concern and empathy. So in that case, it does make it hard to say. It's one of these films that's hard to recommend because, like you say, it's kind of downbeat. There's not an awful lot of exciting headlines to be had from it, but it is a really charming piece of human characteristics in it that does make it for a fairly compelling watch if you can bring yourself to actually start it up in the first place. If you can get over that initial kind of lump of going to watch a film that is basically just going to be about people working in a hotel, which is maybe not what you're in the escapist mood for at that time, but it is certainly worth seeking out, and it's certainly one of the better films we'll be talking about today. So yes, I would recommend this one.
Yeah, you said the right word. It's very human. It's a very, very human film, and I do take your point about the getting to the end of it and feeling, what was the point of that? Because I had a bit of that myself. Just on a bit more reflection, I felt a little differently. And even if I had have come to that, other than the slightly kind of fatalistic ending of it, which is perhaps a more extreme word than really it merits, because it sounds like something worse happens than does.
Yeah.
It's, again, to use the same word, it's very human. A very believable, real character.
Yeah.
And it's really quite an astonishing performance, given, as I said, how little of it actually comes from dialogue.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. And no particular reason for watching this month other than it had been on my to watch list since it came out in 2018. And I'm going to make this the month that I get round to this one then.
Yes.
I'm quite glad I did.
Yeah.